group of state lawmakers are targeting so-called crisis pregnancy centers, which advertise free services and counseling for women struggling with unplanned pregnancies. The centers also show up in web searches alongside full-service medical clinics and organizations like Planned Parenthood. But in a new bill, the lawmakers say the centers use deceptive tactics to try to prevent people from getting abortions. Last year, then, Attorney General Maura Healey made a similar argument, saying these centers engage in, quote, deceptive and coercive tactics to push their agenda. Somerville and Cambridge have already banned deceptive advertising by centers, but in Worcester and East Hampton, officials have raised legal concerns about that approach. And similar laws have been blocked in Illinois and California, whose so-called FACT Act was struck down by the Supreme Court in 2018. So does this proposal stand a chance of becoming law in Massachusetts, and should it? I'm joined now by Diane O'Toole. She's the executive director of the Boston Center for Pregnancy Services, and by Carrie Baker, chair of Smith College's Study of Women and Gender program. Thank you both for being here.
Yes,
Diane, how would you describe the work that you and your colleagues do in Boston?
What we strive to do is create a safe space for women and men to think through their options. First of all, to determine if the woman is pregnant or not, because about half of the people who come into us don't have positive pregnancy tests. But if they do, we strive to create a safe space so that they can think through all their options. And we do provide information about abortion as well as after abortion healing counseling. So we try to stay and support the women regardless of their decision.
Is it fair to say that, taking everything that you just described in aggregate, that your goal when you're dealing with working with someone who has an unplanned pregnancy is to convince them to not have an abortion and to bring the pregnancy to term?
No, it's to provide a safe space so that they can be informed about all of their choices. I was actually in an unplanned pregnancy as a teenager, and I wish I had a space like we create for them to go to.
Okay. Carrie, I want to ask you how you would describe the work that, maybe not Diane personally, but that people who work in the types of centers that she works in, how do you see what they do?
Yeah, so Diane's Center is one of about 2,500 of these, crisis pregnancy centers or anti-abortion centers that exist across the country. They're part of national and international organizations that are sort of the ground game of the anti-abortion movement and are trying to ban abortion nationwide and to prevent people from accessing abortion health care. They do so by pretending to provide unbiased services to people seeking abortion, when in fact they try to pressure people not to have abortions. So, for example, Diane's organization is called the Boston Center for Pregnancy Choices, suggesting that they are pro-choice or that they, support people in no matter what their choices are. But their goal is to prevent abortion. On the homepage of their website, they have a big word, options, and they talk about options counseling as if they are fairly considering everybody's options. They are not about letting people exercise their choice or choose whatever option they want. They try to discourage people from choosing abortion by providing often misinformation about abortion.
What would and I know I'm not going to get you to come to a point of agreement here, but Carrie, what's an example of the sort of misinformation you say is provided at centers like this?
Well, they say that abortion is dangerous when it's actually very, very safe. They say abortion pills are dangerous. Abortion pills are safer than Tylenol.
Okay,
They're really easy to use.
Let me just take those two examples. Do you say those things at your center, Diane?
So there are risks with abortion pills. They are not safe, as Carrie says, and that is the truth. The other point that Carrie made about we provide misinformation, the information that we provide has almost 200 resource citations of studies that have been done. So the information that we provide is medically reviewed. It's based on tons of resource studies. So, there's a lot of misinformation and misconception that Carrie is stating about who we are and what we do.
Let me shift gears here just a little bit. Carrie, my understanding is that there are public officials in Massachusetts who might not be fans of the work that Diane is doing, might not be fans of the work that similar centers are doing, but who believe that there's a real legal risk in passing legislation, whether it's at the local level or the state level, aimed at constricting their ability to do the work that they're doing. How, to your mind, how much latitude does the First Amendment give people who believe abortion is not the right way to go if you're dealing with an unplanned pregnancy? How much latitude does it give them to make their case by presenting information that might be aimed at pushing a person to not get an abortion?
Yeah, I mean, I think people have a First Amendment right to their beliefs and to say whatever they want, but they don't have a First Amendment right to deceive people, to give them medical misinformation that's dangerous. I mean, I think about the Worcester Crisis Pregnancy Center, which told a woman that her pregnancy was fine when it was an ectopic pregnancy, and she ended up in a hospital and almost lost her life. That was the just recently a class action lawsuit has been filed against this CPC. There's another CPC that used unsanitized transvaginal ultrasounds on women. There's another CPCs treat minors, and they don't do criminal background checks on their volunteers. There's a lot of dangers of these centers. And contrary to what Ms. O'Toole said, the American Medical Association and ACOG, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, have both said that anti-abortion centers proliferate misinformation about abortion. They say that it's riskier than it is. I mean, with all due respect, Ms. O'Toole, abortion pills are very, very safe. They should be over the counter. And it's only because of the anti-abortion movement that they're as restricted as they are. And, you know, they want to prevent people from accessing reproductive health care, and it endangers folks.
Diane, you testified in opposition to the state law that we mentioned at the start of this conversation. Yes. I want to just roll a small segment of that proposed bill or proposed law. It states, no limited services pregnancy center shall make or disseminate any statement concerning any pregnancy-related service that is deceptive, whether by statement or omission. If, in fact, you don't believe that the information that you're providing is deceptive, why do you have an issue with that bill?
Well, it unfairly targets pregnancy resource centers, and there are already laws that are on the books that are already anti-deception and
what are those laws? You mentioned that before we started talking.
Yeah,
what are those
Chapter
laws?
93A is a law against consumer deception.
Okay.
So I just like to respond to that.
Sure. Let's let Diane finish. Then
yeah, I want to respond to really what Carrie's been saying, because that's a lot of what is the rhetoric about pregnancy resource centers is untrue and unfair and is not what we do. So, in fact, one of the things that we did after the Attorney General's consumer advisory warning, because we took a look at it, and there were 5 things that were blatantly lies in that consumer advisory warning. And so we did a public information request, and we found that in the almost 40 years in Massachusetts since pregnancy resource centers have been in existence, there have only been 3 complaints in 40 years against pregnancy resource centers in Massachusetts. And that's from the Attorney General's office itself. So why the consumer advisory warning?
We are running out of time here on an incredibly thorny issue. But, Carrie, you're going to get the last word. I know you wanted to respond to one of the last things Diane said. Yeah,
those consumer advisory laws don't apply to crisis pregnancy centers, as Ms. O'Toole knows, because they don't charge for their services. They don't apply to nonprofit organizations. They only apply to people who are actually selling services. These organizations target young people and low-income people who are vulnerable by offering free services and take advantage of that vulnerability. So I guess I just, we differ. I encourage folks to go to the website of the abortiontruthcampaign.org, which has a lot of research, peer-reviewed scientific research about what these centers are doing, about the medical misinformation that they distribute, and about actions that are being taken across the state to address this misinformation, sort of post-Dobbs.
We unfortunately have to leave it there. Carrie Baker and Diane O'Toole, thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.